What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Simply People podcast. I'm your host, Dax Vanderwall. This is season 1, all about the magic of generosity. And joining me in this journey of generosity is Todd Thacker, the founder of Simply People. Todd, nice shirt.
Thank you very much. It is my ripple effect shirt.
Okay, ripple effect.
Nice segue, right?
Great segue. I was being generous, though. Did you see that? I was like a compliment.
I did. That is generosity.
I'm getting it.
And
so
I appreciate it.
Of course. Ripple effect. So yeah, that's actually what this episode is all about. If you're just hopping into this series with us, we're just talking about how generosity transforms. That was episode 1. Episode 2 is all about listening to that whisper, that nudge, when to give, when to be generous in your time, talents, treasures. And in this episode, we just want to talk about the ripple effects of giving. And I think one of the coolest things about God, about how he works, how he uses us, is sometimes he allows us to see the ripple effects of one small act.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't feel big in the moment. It might feel like a small thing. Like, oh, God is just telling me to give Todd a compliment on a shirt. But who knows the ripple effect? You know, maybe that just made your
shirts.
day.
I'll just get better shirts.
You'll get better shirts. Yes. And maybe that made, something like that. So I actually let's just start there. Tell us about a time when you felt a nudge to give. Maybe it didn't feel like the biggest deal in the world, but looking back, you see the ripple effect and you're like, wow, look at what God did.
Actually, the first thing that pops to my mind is where I watched someone that had an impact on me and they didn't even know they had an impact on me. And it was a woman that our kids were on the same soccer team and she had cancer. And the sicker she got, the stronger her faith was, etc. And that had a really big impact on me. And it grew my faith by watching her in a trial be generous with her time, being thoughtful, being considerate, not being a victim at all about the fact that she was dying. She ended up dying. And it's just crazy that I watched her and she doesn't even know that she had a big impact on me. But there have been a number of instances of different things that have caused ripples that I obviously didn't see.
Yeah. Tell us about some of your missions work. I mean, you've gone to whatever it's called a million
Faith
times.
Alive
What's it
in
called?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Yes. So, I don't know. When you started going there, which you've opened up about how you didn't want to be obedient to that in the first place. But now looking back, you've been back 1,000 times, and all that's happened since then. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about it.
Actually, I've got a pretty interesting story where we put together a team, and this was, about 10 or 12 years ago, and AIDS was a very popular thing for the mission program at Bayside, our church. And so a travel to Africa was, a lot of people were interested in that. So we were trying to go to Faith Alive, and we had a team of 16, which was a really big team, signed up to go. And then it was dangerous there. And so about 8 weeks before we were supposed to go, a bombing, there was some bombings, and there's a lot of tribal warfare there. The country is half Muslim, half Christian, and sometimes there's that. Often the tribal warfare over land grabs will hide behind religion. There's anyway, a lot of violence there. So it was not, and they were gearing up for presidential election, which seems to bring out the violence. And so we had a team of 16. We had met like 3 different times for our training things. We were all on track. And about 2 months out, Dr. Chris is like, I don't think it's safe to go. Bayside's like, Todd, I don't think it's safe to go. I said, let me check with Dr. Chris. He's like, it's not safe to go. So boom, we had to cancel the trip.
Dr. Chris is Faith Alive?
Yep. He's the doctor. He's the founder of Faith Alive in Nigeria.
Okay.
And so, and he was our contact. So anyway, so I'm thinking, we had a group going to Cambodia, and I'd always had it kind of an interest in going there. So I'm like, okay, well, my team's going to, fall apart. I'm going to go to Cambodia. Turns out that my team's like, no, we like each other. This is super fun. Where can we all go? Well, the only place that we could all go that was Colombia, South America, which is kind of funny. I told my boss, I said, I can't go to Nigeria because it's not safe. And she's like, wait a minute. You can't go to Nigeria because it's safe, but you can go to Colombia? And this was like 15 years ago where Colombia was not perceived to be very safe itself.
Right.
So anyway, we reached out to the team and everyone's like, yes, I want to go. And it was pretty interesting because it felt like we had all signed up because of AIDS and that we were going to go to Nigeria. And then we ended up having to go to Colombia. And what we did over there, I called our contact in Colombia, who is American. He and his wife were missionaries, lifetime missionaries over there. And they're like, honestly, I don't know what you're planning to do, but we're looking at 2-day programs. One, it would be VBS, Vacation Bible School, and one would be an educational thing for young leaders. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty similar to what we were going to be doing, one of the aspects that we were going to be doing in Nigeria. And he said, we're going to travel, and every 2 days you'd be in a different area. If you guys could come over, wait, a team of 16? Oh my gosh, they had 3 people signed up. So we ended up bringing our whole team over. We were able to do, from their perspective, 3 years of work. They said for us to come and do these programs that we were doing, they just wouldn't be able to do it. We brought T-shirts for all the kids. So we brought probably 800 T-shirts. So we're doing little vacation Bible schools every 2 days, and we brought T-shirts for the kids and all these different things. And what was really interesting is what drew everyone to go and want to do it was Faith Alive. But where we were really needed was in Colombia. And because we had bonded over Faith Alive, et cetera, we went to Colombia where the real need was. And so it was, we all were signing up to volunteer to go to Africa, but then we were all obedient and went over to Colombia, and then the ripple effect through them, the training that we did and the impact of that after we left. Gary came and stayed with me 6 months later, and he was just like, what you guys were able to do was crazy. And it was really interesting. So before we even left, we got to see God use us, and then we got to see the longer term impact and the ripple of our just saying yes. And I think most of the people that were signing up are actually saying yes because of the AIDS crisis and the interest in going to Africa, but being flexible to allow themselves to even in that be interrupted, and ended up being a really cool experience for all of us.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I mean, unexpected, not what you thought you were signing up for.
Exactly.
The whole team, in fact, like this was not the trip that they thought. But,
exactly.
I like that. It's interesting. I mean, when you see other people being generous, when you hear stories like the ones you've been sharing, and you mentioned it in that first story, soccer team, girl who had cancer, you were inspired by her generosity, and that's one of the ripple effects of it.
Right.
I want to dive deeper into that because I think that's really powerful. I think when we see people give, it inspires other people, which means when we're obedient, when we give, when we're generous, there's an opportunity for that ripple effect as well. You never know who's watching, and maybe the person that you are generous toward, you inspire them. Like, wow, you know what? I want to do that as well for someone. Do you have any stories exemplifying that?
I had a Thrive kid that lived with me, and Thrive kids, again, are college students. They're poor. They're living with people because to save money, et cetera, and they're in school or ministry full time.
Yeah.
They're not working. And a Thrive kid was, who was living with me, he gave someone $900. He had $900 in the account. She was raising money to go do a world mission trip, 11 countries, 11 months. And for whatever reason, this kid felt that he was supposed to give the money. And it was like that. I was like blown away. Then his dad, who didn't really have faith, heard the story that Josh gave the money. And so then his dad gave him $1,000.
Wow.
And what that did for me was like, oh my gosh. And what I said in the first episode, Angie says you can't outgive God. And here was Josh who didn't have the money. He was living with me. I knew he didn't have the money. He gave all the money he had. You talked the other day about the woman giving out of, she only had 2 coins and gave out of her poverty as opposed to her abundance.
The widow's offering.
Yep. So Josh was giving a widow's offering, but a ripple effect was on me. And I had talked about, when I raised money, but to have a kid that didn't have money and then him go and do that really had a profound impact on me and gave me an insight to opportunities that I could come alongside other kids and, help Thrive kids that were trying to do different things, or kids that were trying to do a mission trip and didn't have their funding. And then I would just give the money anonymously and help them out. So there's a ripple effect, so that where Josh did that, caused me to do that, then I'm blessing other people who are like, okay, I don't even know who's doing this. Sometimes they would write a letter to the mystery donor, like, I don't know who you are, but I would just really appreciate that. But again, it's those impacts, and it builds, and it helps people see that there are opportunities out there to come alongside people. And then that can happen in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I think that's a great illustration of ripple effects. So he gives, and then you're inspired by that. His dad was inspired by that. He doesn't know that his dad will actually give him more money in return.
No.
In that small act of obedience. He was probably like, God, that doesn't make sense. I don't have a lot of money. I'm a college student. I'm broke, but you're calling me to give in this way. That's a great illustration of ripple effects.
And one of the things we talked about is how to actually step up and do it. He did it before he could talk himself out of it.
Yes, that's good.
Which was really powerful.
Sometimes you just got to send it impulsively.
Right. And no, again, and that had a big impact on me. And God was using him to grow me as I was learning to be, more generous.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that is a good example in general. You talked last episode about being a host home for these college students.
Right.
You've had like 30 something over the span of years, again, including me. And so ripple effect in that is you allowed young college students like me to pursue their calling and get an education and whatnot. And now everything that we are going to do now as young people, you play a part in that. That's another ripple effect.
Right.
You opened your home resources for us, for me, for other people. And that's another example. There's another example too. I think sometimes we have conferences around here at the church we go to, Bayside. We've talked about it a few times. And there was a conference years ago where, and I've seen examples of like this out there where like at some Christian conference, they bring a waitress up on stage or some random person, some delivery person. And then they just say, we're just going to take a tip offering right now. Everyone just pass cash up to the front. Let's see how much. Boom, just gave this random delivery driver $30,000 tip. And honestly, I guess this kind of has two questions. On the one hand, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, shouldn't giving happen anonymously? Like, why are you doing it publicly? But also, I can't deny that inspires me to give. Right. It inspires other people to give. There's this ripple effect. So kind of say whatever you want. But I do want to ask specifically, because you did mention giving anonymously, knowing that generosity inspires so many people. When do you decide to be more public about it versus completely anonymous?
Well, I'll get to that in a second, but what's really interesting, and I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, but what's really crazy is I was at one of the very first Thrive conferences that you were just talking about, and basically what they did is they said, we want everyone, whatever change. This is when people had change, not just dollar bills.
What's change?
Change would be quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, those things.
So serious question, does that even exist anymore? Do we have
for people 65
I have not
and older?
seen change in years. Why do pennies even exist? Like, honestly.
I think they're going to stop making pennies.
Okay, sounds good.
But anyway, and so what they did is they just had everyone gather their change. They didn't ask for dollars and change, and boom. What that did was and they blessed someone. And that was mind-boggling to me. Again, that you could just put that out there and radically have an impact on someone's life just with little acts of kindness. And I think what's so great in a setting like that is that it can create a ripple effect, because in me, it helped me see generosity in a different way. It helped me see that Todd as a small person and as, you know what I mean, one individual or whatever, that I can actually help make a difference in someone's life. So those are kind of ripple effects that, and I do think that those should be public. And that there's definitely value in that. Another thing that jumps out at me is the first time I ever heard about AIDS was at Bayside, or more in depth about AIDS. And they had a guy come and speak, and he talked about that for $1, you could block there. You could give a mother a shot and while she was pregnant, and you could give the baby the shot. As soon as she went into labor, she would get the shot, and you get the baby the shot when the baby was born, and it would reduce the transmission of AIDS from a pregnant mother to her infant to less than 2%.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, which I don't really understand it, but I think the normal rate is like a 40 or 50% rate, but it would reduce it for $1. And so this guy spoke, and it was a spontaneous offering at Bayside, and $10,000 or $12,000 was raised just for people trying to, going outside, and they had a box finally that said, donations and whatever. So then they had him come back, and they did a second offering and raised $100,000, and that's what planted the seed for Bayside to send a team over to Africa with Dr. Art to find out, and that's where they came across Dr. Chris, who had a fledgling clinic. And again, it's just the ripple effect and being open to that. And being open to that. And then they came back and they're like, oh, well, they need new curtains. They need this. And of course, Ray, our pastor, is like a big visionary. He's like, well, what they really need, it sounds like, is a building. What about that? And they're like, oh my gosh.
Let's just build a building.
So they did. They gave $800,000 in 2004, and an architect who partnered with the architect over there that built Faith Alive that's been treating 300 people a day for free for the last 20 years.
Wow.
And again, those are all ripple effects from small acts and allowing the acts to build. And one of the things with Simply People that's inspiring is inspiring, or what we're trying to do is we're trying to empower people to see that a little act, we've been doing the microloans. We talked about that. Yep. That a microloan, you give a woman $100. We raise it. We give it to our partner. Our partner trains the women. They give the women the $100. They're in little cohorts. They come alongside them. Our partner is doing all the work on the ground. They're amazing. And then one of the commitments is for the woman is a year later that she's going to pay that forward to another woman. And what that does, so the woman goes from someone in need who now becomes a hero to someone else. But look at the ripple effects. Look, now she's sending her kids back to school. Her kids are seeing the positive things of generosity. What is the ripple effects of that community? And then we, on this side, we're trying to Simply People shine a light on that so that students here or others can see the impact and then be inspired. Wait, if I can do that with $100, what else? If I gave up my Starbucks, one Starbucks a week, what could I do? Or if we all did that, what could we do? And that's the beauty of it, kind of taking off the blinders and helping people see the opportunity. And that's the beauty of ripple effect, because you never know where it's going to take you. And that's exciting to me. Yeah. And I don't think I ever really answered the question that you asked me.
I was going to come back to it.
Okay, so please do.
Do you remember what the question was?
No, tell me.
I will be generous. I'll be selfless here, and I'll say it again.
You're bringing a tear.
No, so I literally am just like everything you just said, like hashtag ripple effect. Like I'm literally just thinking this should be a book, literally in itself, just documented how one act led to a million different things. There's so many stories that people could probably have. I mean, it's really cool. Yeah. So I asked about giving anonymously versus publicly. Right. Again, we both agree. Like there's these instances where there's these public givings at conferences or church. I mean, second offerings and stuff. It does inspire you every single time. It does. Right. So when are the moments where you feel I shouldn't make this public? I'm going to give privately and then not.
I think it's super interesting. It's been a journey for me. And one of the things I said is I used to be the person that would have wanted to be the recognized. And, it was interesting. I was in Nigeria, and the architect, he and I became pretty good friends. And he was always trying to give me stuff, be generous to me, and, whatever. I'm like, with all due respect, I didn't say this, but what was going through my mind is I have more resources than he has. And I hate for him to waste his things on me. And so after me telling him no 3 or 4 times, he's like, Todd, do you like to give and come alongside people? I'm like, yes, I do. And he goes, so do I. And every time you tell me no, you deny me the opportunity to do what you enjoy, or, to honor what he's being called to be generous. And that was like, whoa, okay, Todd, that's a really interesting thing. And then I had a thing at Bayside where they wanted the home opener person. Like you said, I had 40 kids live with me over 10 years. And one year they called me up and they're like, Todd, we want you to come to the staff meeting. We want to recognize you in front of everyone. I'm like, honestly, I don't want to do that because I didn't want I didn't feel the need for that.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, Todd, it's really important to me. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. But then I thought of Amos, the architect, and I was like, okay, if I'm thinking of that, where that was me allowing, so I said yes, and it was actually ended up being pretty fun. They did a video. They weren't just recognizing me; they were recognizing home openers, a couple other ones, and the other two each had one person. And they did a video of like 5 different people that live with me. I love living with Todd. I love living with Todd. So it was a fun thing, and I think they wanted it because it was promoting the opportunity, the fun, and the benefits of being a home opener. Dax, again, I'm not really answering your question, but one of the things is when I mentor all these kids, you can see the impact that I'm having on them. But what's more difficult to see is the impact that they're having on me. And so many conversations that you and I have had over the years, it's like you and I can be talking about something and it may be about you, but God's like, Todd, isn't that the answer that you've been looking for too? And so it's, when God's involved and when generosity in your heart's in the right place, I think a lot of it actually goes to your answer your question is heart posture.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so I really do like to do it under the radar. I did have a kid come to me and he's like, Todd, I feel like God's put in my heart that you're going to give me my car or give me your car. And I had an older BMW convertible and I'm like, yeah, well, that's great. But God's certainly not putting that on my heart. And over the next 2 weeks, that's all I kept hearing and whatever. And so I get the kid, we go to the coffee shop, we're sitting there. I'm like, dude, you've had a big impact on me the last 2 weeks. He claims he didn't even remember the conversation. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about my car. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, dude, you told me that God's put it on your heart that I'm supposed to give you a car. And he goes, Todd, honestly, I don't really remember that, but if you're telling me that, I believe it, and whatever. And I said, well, I thought you were crazy, and I am going to give you my car, and I'm going to give you my car today. Except the only deal is you're going to buy my car. I'm going to give you the $5 that you're going to give me, and then if because everyone knew it was my car.
Yeah. And it'd be pretty obvious. He's driving around with a UCLA license plate.
Yes, I think I may have taken the UCLA license. Frame off. Okay. I do love the Bruins, by the way. And with all due respect to the people from SC, I do have a master's from there, but I'm a Bruin. But anyway, so in that instance, I did let people know. I mean, I didn't say, I said I sold the car to him.
Yeah. Totally.
And he was able to do that. But that was actually an act of generosity. And I think it's a heart posture. And I think our jobs, again, is say yes to what God puts on our heart.
Yeah.
And I do like what you're saying because there are times when you can do it. But I also think, me saying that 40 kids live with me, you could think that that's boastful. Or you could think, I like to think that that's more of, by me saying that, someone might hear that. And it might not be, I need to open my home to 40 kids. It might be, wow, Todd's embracing his ministry, his faith in a different way. What are my opportunities to do that?
Yeah.
We talked about in the very first episode that when I went on the first mission trip and they're like, you're going to send letters. And I'm like, I'm not sending letters. I'll write a check. And then we sent letters and we raised $8,000.
Yep.
So they started having me be the fundraising person for the mission trips and get up and tell the story. And basically what I'll say to people, if you send 100 letters, I believe that 25% of those letters are about raising money for you to go on your mission trip. And my view is the other 75% of those letters, those are God's letters. And, maybe you're going to get a letter, Dax, and it's be like, okay, why is Todd going to Nigeria? Okay, what could I do in my community? Or I don't even understand that someone's faith would cause them to go do something like this. What can I, maybe I'll go explore it. Or, I don't know what it is, but again, I think even in something like that, there can be ripple effects that we're not aware of. This side of heaven, we're not aware of it. But sometimes God does let us see the impact that we're having.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, first of all, just out of obedience, I do want to say, I feel that God just told me that you should give me your house. And so since you put that on my heart, I just want to be obedient on that. And
all right.
You should probably be too.
And I will tell you that if God asks me to give you my house, Dax, I will publicly say that I will give you my house if God asks me to do that.
Okay, so I just signed a lease or something right now.
Well, you need to talk to God more because He hasn't put in my heart yet.
But I will say though, actually, like him actually thinking that, or him saying that, I think you should give me your car. The fact that he was obedient to that and that I'm hearing about it now, it does inspire me. It's like, man, even if God told me that, I still might be afraid to even ask in the first place.
Right.
So yeah, I'll take your house soon. But connected with that, I was going to say ripple effect. I love that ripple effect is so there's external ripple effect, but then there's also an internal that you're talking about.
Yep.
The interchange transformation we talked about in episode 1. When you give, when you're generous, there's this ripple effect inward as well. It transforms you.
Right.
And then lastly, and then I'll throw it back to you. I love that, sometimes we do see the ripple effect.
Yep.
And then sometimes we don't. And that's totally okay. That's also a huge blessing. Right. And then sometimes we might be generous in some way. Maybe we have just any opportunity to be generous. And for some reason, God is like, hey, you're not supposed to tell people about this. Mm-hmm. Let this just be between me and you. And there's something I would say extra magical in that, extra blessed in that is like, you know what? Yeah. And then there might be times when God is like, I actually want you to share that story and tell people that you hosted 40 students because I actually want to use it to inspire other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that.
Right. And I think it's all those things. And honestly, Dax, I think that's part of the inherent fun of living a life of generosity because it's this unexplained ripple. I have a great story where I didn't see the impact and ultimately I did.
Still today? Or you
No,
did?
I ultimately did. And,
Okay.
and it really caught me off guard. So I think I mentioned that I was hosting and a kid came up to me and asked me to pray for him. That was last episode. And I didn't even know the kid's name. So I stopped what I was doing.
Lord, I pray for this young gentleman right here. Yeah,
exactly.
Love that.
So anyway, I'm like, dude, what's your name? His name was Tim. I'm like, okay, Tim, blah, blah, blah. And so I prayed for him and we went on a block. It was a big Thrive party that we didn't really participate in anymore. And I spent the time with him. So there's an act of generosity. I was there to host and I allowed myself to be interrupted. And then for, the next year or so, probably once a month or maybe a little bit more, he and I would meet up, etc. And so fast forward, so every year with Thrive, they would have a home opener breakfast. And so basically any of us that were opening our home to Thrive kids, we would have a breakfast and just to give us opportunity, to thank us and to give us opportunity to learn more about what was going to happen in Thrive that year. And so I'm in there with my Thrive kids. I can't remember if it was you that year or not. And so this kid gets up. He's the second year. The first year was a girl. She was perfect. She had it written out. She was articulate, all these things. The next kid gets up and totally disheveled. Seems like he was just asked to do it. In the moment, I prayed for him, which isn't something I would have done necessarily as much. Now, yes, but then. And I'm like, okay, God, just give this kid the words because he seems totally lost or whatever. And he starts to tell the story. And he said, 2 years ago, I was in a coffee shop and there was a kid there and he had his Bible open. And I went up because I was just exploring my faith. I went up, I started talking to him and his name was Tim and he was doing Thrive. And so now I'm starting my second year of Thrive. And it was just a random conversation. And so I said to my home opener kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know this story. I used to mentor Tim, and so Tim must have told me the story. So the more the guy keeps talking and etc., I'm like, this isn't making sense. He's like, and Tim was like, you need to thrive. You need to thrive. I'm like, that's not Tim. That's me. I would be the one that like, no, come on. And I'm a big cheerleader. And so anyway, the kid finishes up. His name was Peeps. And I go up to him. His nickname was Peeps. And I go up to him later and I introduced myself. I said, hey, Peeps, it's good to meet you. He goes, Todd, I know you. I've been to your house a few times. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, a lot of kids come to my house. And I'm really sorry that I don't remember you. But anyway, good to see you again. I loved your testimony or whatever. I just have one question. I said, was there anyone with Tim Denson when you were in the coffee shop the first time? And he looks at me and this big smile comes on his face. And he's like, yeah, you were. And I'm like, did you know that before today? And he goes, no, I just remembered it now. Now, he had been in my house. We had both met a couple more times. We had no idea and then found out. And then the crazy thing, again, ripple effect. So here's an innocent conversation. Here's a kid that's gone to Thrive. And now he's allowed an innocent conversation to change his life. He gets up and tells that story and the ripple from there. And then I get a call from Thrive a week later that one of the home openers had a stroke. I said, oh, someone at the breakfast mentioned that to me, and they were hoping that I could take this kid while they figured out what to do with it. And I said, yes, I think I heard that story. Who was that? And they're like, oh, that was, it was Peeps. I'm like, yes, he can come and he can stay. You don't have to find another home. So then he ended up living with me for a year. And this kid that I had no idea, I met in a coffee shop, and it was just a ripple, a crazy ripple from there. That was we were fortunate enough to get to see the impact. But I think the encouraging part is look at all the impact that was going on that I didn't even know about. And I think that's part of the fun of living a generous life, allowing ourselves to be interrupted with our time, with our hearts. I mean, one of the things that a lot of Thrive kids said to me is that I've never lived in such a loving place before. And that was, that's a heart posture, and that's being generous, with your heart. And obviously I was paying for their food and stuff like that. So I was with my resources too, but there's just a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah. And another, just quick practical thing there, like when you saw Peeps speaking and kind of fumbling a little bit in his words, you took a moment to pray for him. Yeah. That's generosity right there. Yep. That's also spiritual generosity, seeing an opportunity. How can I help this person? Maybe there's no practical way. Maybe I'm literally just going to take some time and pray. Maybe that's not the thing I want to do. I'd rather think about something else. I'd rather talk to someone else. But taking a moment to pray, that's a great example of spiritual generosity. And I just want to say, I bet that every single person listening, I bet this is true for, because this is what I just felt. There's moments in your life, every single person who's listening, there's moments where you sacrificed in some way, where you were generous in some way. Yep. And I bet if you actually took the time to think about it, you could look back and see ripple effects of how God used that thing, how that one moment led to other moments, led to some type of ripple effect. And I think God allows us to see this, first of all, because it increases our faith. Right. We realize God is so awesome. And also I think it motivates us to continue living with that attitude. Right. So maybe stories are coming to your mind. Maybe after this episode, I want to challenge everyone. Literally sit there and think, how have I seen the ripple effects of generosity? Maybe you saw someone else give financially or give their time and serve something, build something for free, whatever it was. And then you're like, wow, that led to this other thing, which led to this other thing. Start looking for these ripple effects in your own story.
I didn't even understand the ripple effects, Dax, honestly, because, when we're living life, we're doing it. And, I know the first time I went to Nigeria, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do all these things. And Nigeria was big in my heart and this and that and the other. And then I came back from the mission trip, and all the hats that I wear, I was a dad, I was a husband, I was a breadwinner, I was a volunteer, I was an usher at church, all these different things, and put those hats back on, and pretty soon Nigeria's sucked away and forgotten and, whatever. But what I have started to do is started to see that, see all the different opportunities that exist. And I am actually writing a book. And in writing the book, to do exactly what you just said, to step back and look at some of the things I've done or that I didn't have the time to think about while I was going through the motions and living it, or you're in a crisis mode and you're not, but in a crisis mode, responding with grace, was responding with humility. You know, people are watching. When we're in crisis, people are watching, and if we can have a Christ-like response, and if we can be generous with our forgiveness, if we can not be judgment, people are watching all of that. And to me, all of those are elements of generous life. Again, I used to think generosity was about giving. And, you know, like I said, the very first time, giving $20, I thought that was a big deal. It's not. I mean, it is. I'm not trying to belittle anyone that does that. But there's so much more than that. And the more I've gotten into it, the more I've focused on it. And the more, you raise a really good point, because all of us are doing it in some way. And the more that we can kind of take the blinders off and see that, then that creates opportunity for a ripple effect. It creates a desire. It created a desire in me to want to do more and to continue to be open to opportunities. I mean, you know, if someone had told me I was going to have 40 kids live with me, I would have told them they were crazy. If someone had told me I was going to have a heroin addict live with me, I would have said, there's no way. I've got 4 daughters. There's no way. And yet those were some of the richest experiences of my life. But it wasn't. And the other thing is like, too often I think that we are so tunnel vision on what our expectations are, or what our definition of success is, and what our life's going to look like. And the crazy thing, since I started this generosity journey, is so much of my life is just not what I envisioned for myself. But I've never felt happier. I've never.
It's better. It's better than you thought.
It's richer. Yeah. It's more fun, and it's energizing.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the widow's offering in one of the Gospels, I forgot which one. I mean, that's probably the best example I could think of ripple effect. Little did that widow know her small little offering was going to be a part of a gospel, one of the biographies of Jesus, where billions of people for 2,000 years read her story and are inspired by that.
Right.
That's crazy. And she probably didn't know that during her time here on earth. Yet that's another aspect of that, is you don't know. Maybe you see the ripples of kindness and generosity in eternity. And that should still be worth it. God, I don't know why you just called me to do that, but wow, I cannot wait to get to heaven. And God's going to be like, look at what I used this for. You had no clue, but this is what I like. That's just so awesome.
And I think it will be like that. I like to say, this side of heaven, we're not going to see a lot of things. But what's super interesting, like the Peep story, what was so cool about that is I got an insight into something that I'd completely forgotten. It was a 10-minute conversation or a 15-minute conversation with someone when I was really focused on someone else, and yet it had a significant impact on his life. And then he went on to go to YWAM, and he spent like 5 years there, and you know, touching all these other lives. You know, there's a story you were talking, I think maybe last time, about we just don't, the ripple effect or whatever, but Billy Graham, one of the greatest speakers, and it was his buddy that got him to go up and do the altar call. And if he hadn't been there to get him to go do that, would Billy Graham have touched all these lives? So we never know the who's, the what's, the whys. And that's the beauty of God. And I think that's the fun of it. We don't have to know. But we do know that God does want us to use us, does want to use us. And I think that's an important thing for everyone to realize. When you're feeling the nudges or you're starting to see a ripple effect, that's God trying to use us, invite us in. And I think, you know, again, we talked about a spiritual world. Often people are lulled into a false sense of complacency. Well, I go to church, I volunteer, I this and that. But are we really being generous? Are we really being open to where God may really want to be inviting us in? And I wasn't. I thought I was doing all those things. I was a check-the-box Christian, truly. And now I see just the sky's the limit, and it's just so much fun.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but this is my favorite episode so far. I've loved this. It really is cool. I do think there's a part of me that's like trying to say, you know, how can we make this more practical? But I really do think the idea of just ripple effects is just recognizing it and just being inspired by them. So I do think, again, I would challenge everyone to just take a moment and just think about when God has called you to be generous in your time, maybe praying for someone, saying a compliment, complimenting a shirt, whatever it is, or giving financially, and just look back and just be inspired, be encouraged that, wow, you know what? I do remember now. Maybe I didn't notice it in the moment, but looking back, God used that to open this other door. God opened that to connect me to this other person. I think it should just be a part of our attitude of generosity, a habit to just see the ripple effects and then thank God for them. And I think that'll just encourage us to keep giving. Is there any final words you would like to say about ripple effects?
The only thing I want to say is it's just so much fun. And it's a mystery.
You should have FOMO.
That's right.
You should have FOMO over not giving, over not generosity.
Well, of not being a part of the ripple.
Yes.
But the thing is like, it's there, it's happening. And if you take the time out, and I really like what you said is like, because I didn't understand it, Dax. I mean, I started to do it more and make it a part of my life. But truly, in writing my book, I really saw how much there is going on in the ripple effects. And so, for example, with a donation letter, where I said no at first, and now I come full circle, and now I'm leading the thing about people that give their mission letters. But a mission letter, I can look at that as all about Todd going on a mission trip, or I can look at as God's letter and what's God trying to do, and how might he be trying to encourage someone, or how might he be trying to inspire someone locally to get involved, or this or that or the other. And I think that is what a generous lifestyle, that's what Simply People's trying to do. We're trying to get people to see that a small act can launch a ridiculous life, a ridiculous opportunity, and an endless ripple. And, and again, someone that funds a micro loan that is going to a woman in Africa who has now radically changed her family this side of heaven, you're probably not going to have very much of an understanding of what that did in her community, what that did for her family, what that did for all of that. But I do believe that, God's got that for us. And I think it's it's an amazing legacy.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a roller coaster, and you don't always see the turns and twists and all that, but it's super fun. And I would just encourage everyone to take a look and jump in. Every drop creates a ripple, and go for it.
Come on, ripple effects. Well, thank you for listening to episode 3 of the Magic of Generosity. And if you want to know more about Simply People, of which Todd is the founder, if you want to hear more about what they're doing and potential microloan opportunities in the future to give ripple effects in that way, make sure to follow Simply People on all social media platforms. Links will be down in the description below. And this has been an amazing journey. We're going to continue the journey into next episode, The Magic of Generosity. So thank you guys for joining us. And Todd and I will see you in the next episode. See you soon.